to New York. Here it's late morning, and in London you're nearing the end of a second day of rich presentations on male psychology. Many thanks to John Barry for arranging for our electronic encounter. I have only a few minutes to tell you about existential therapy, why it's the treatment of choice, I believe, with method. Since I have such a very short time, I want to invite you to have a look at my chapter just mentioned in the Palgrave Handbook of Male Psychology, and that was published, edited by Professor Groth, and in my book, After Psychotherapy, published in 2017. There you will find a detailed account of the history and theory of existential therapy, as I understand it, and there are also in it examples from clinical practice last now than 40 years. I also invite you to send me email with any questions you might have for clarification, because I have to leave a great deal out in a short period of time. There will be some gaps and some questions that deserve asking, so please send them to me and send them along with your comments. Feel free to be as bold and challenging as you wish. I love the discussion. I make some assumptions about boys and men that are relevant to my topic, which is male-friendly therapy from an existential perspective. That should be what's in the program. You will see their relevance in a few minutes. The first assumption is that in general, boys and men are more invested in the present than in the past or the future, primarily because they are less concerned about the future. Now, I make no value judgments about this. Many reasons, however, to adduce for the tendency, which may account for greater impulsiveness, but also for taking creative risks. The second assumption I make is that the child he once was remains more alive in the male, I believe, than it does in the female. Longer during the early years of maturation, which developmentalists have known about for a long time, but also later on throughout the life course. I do not say males are more childlike, but even if that were true, I would not necessarily count it as a handicap. Childlike wonder should be a source of innovation. As Aristotle said, you'll recall, philosophizing begins with wonder and childlike wonder. The third assumption I make is that in general, most males, the lads and the blokes, have less to say and are more likely to do what's on their minds than talk about it first. This is not a symptom of something like lexithymia, which is the inability to find words, feelings. It may indicate instead an innate suspicion about the slipperiness of language. Or it may have something to do with evolution and males having been on the hunt, being savvy about not giving away one's presence by making noises with things like. By now, by the way, you may have been looking around the room and concluded that this speech seems not to apply to most of the men who are here at this conference today, who have a lot to say. I'm one of them. But keep in mind, we are atypical. Let me just leave it at that. Please note, I do not claim that the existentialist approach I will describe is the suitable for females, but that it may be more likely to potentiate realizing the goal of existential therapy when working with females. So what is existential therapy? What I will call ET from here on out. Yesterday, I think you heard Professor Guy Matheson, who also represents this perspective, which he would term existential analysis, that each of us who practice existential therapy has a somewhat different take on ET, predicts that there will be as many existential therapists as there are existential therapists, and you would be right. But there are some similarities, too. Unlike any other modality of treatment, whether it be psychiatry, analysis of some sort, social work, counseling, coaching, or form of clinical treatment, in any form, ending with psychotherapy. ET, as I understand it and practice it, is not interested in the past of the other human being sitting there with us in a session of consultation, nor is ET concerned with the other's future, which might include offering a plan of action or eliciting a promise to try to behave differently in the near future. This might be cognitive behavioral psychotherapist. Finally, for ET, a form of humanistic psychotherapy, as it is generally understood. Indeed, is, I would say, somewhat paradoxically, psychotherapy without the psych. It is concerned about the existence, more appropriately formulated, the existing human being, just like me, therapist. By the way, I have adopted a term therapeutic instead of therapist. I won't use it from here on out, but you can read I've made that choice, the Paul Grave chapter. I'll continue anyhow with the term therapist. Point is that a psyche is a what? Existence refers to a who. You'll see the importance of this, the distinction. ET is an encounter between one who, another who are already fundamentally involved with each other in an all-encompassing and yet inexplicit way. Each existing human being has a rich pre-understanding, you might say, shared world in which there are always, first of all, and above all, others, other people, who are perhaps never so poignantly present as when they are physically somewhere else. We know that from experience. Now let's cut to the chase. The goal of ET is to provide a situation in which the other may resume or recover the present. Turns out to be a unique present, his or her present. By present here, I mean nothing more than the temporal dimension of the present, as distinguished from the past and the future. But note that for ET, present is in each instance in existence, not the other way around. And that can be lost. Present can be lost. Existing can be dislocated from the present. It is created. When this happens, individuals experience the sort of distress may cause them to seek out a friend or a therapist. To allow the present of the other to be recovered requires that the therapist step aside and make way for the other. Those words, I think, get at the heart of existential therapy. The therapist steps aside and makes way for the other. But notice how very different this way of showing concern is from stepping in and intervening in the life of the, which is the hallmark of medical practice. The approach borrowed, perhaps unknowingly, by most therapists, practicing most novel forms of contemporary counsel psychotherapy. So, these two kinds of concerns, though, worlds apart. ET are concerns expressed by stepping aside. The other is granted freedom to be fully present again. That means leaving behind the past, which in any case can't be changed, and tacitly acknowledging that the future will have its way with us, with hopefully the least to say from it in any case. While necessary and important and useful in medicine, social work, coaching, education, and the rest, concern shown by stepping in and intervening, however, is for me the end of therapy, death of therapy. It makes therapy impossible. Of course, it may mean the life of someone to step in if you are an EMT or social worker or psychiatrist. But here we're speaking of something else, therapy. ET, I would say, is precluded by intervening. I have to speak up as clear as I go along. On this notion of therapeutic concern, this thing aside, last April at Frankfurt presented this view to a group of psychotherapists, academics, mental health policymakers from all over Europe, Canada, and the United States, actually also from New Zealand. And as it turned out, at least one existential therapist was there, as I found out. At the end of my talk, just like this one, I was approached by a late 20-something Austrian who works with adolescent boys in a community-based outreach program for drug addicts in Vienna. He was smiling. My spoken German is very poor these days, and he had limited facility in English. We nevertheless met, countered, and understood each other at the level of our, I would say, respective existence. He said something to me, and it's the point of this anecdote. This stepping us up that you spoke of was very much like Taoism, isn't it? Well, he was spot on. There's more to be said about that at that time. While ET is appropriate for everyone, since its effect is at the level of existence, not gender, or age, or culture, or ethnicity, nationality, it is, in my experience, nevertheless, especially effective with males. And here is why. I spoke earlier of three features of males in general. There are more. These three seem especially pertinent to our discussion here. I do not think of these as gender stereotypes, but rather deeply embedded dispositions tending toward a certain range of possible experiences that may be expressed more or less typical forms of behavior. I mentioned less interest in the future, consequently greater present moment, greater ease of contact with the child in them, which has of necessity been domesticated, that remains alive in every one of us. And third, a tendency in acting to say less and not just to do. Recovering the present, I would argue, is perhaps more readily welcomed by individuals with such dispositions. With these features of mind, let me now describe one setting in which I believe the goal of ET is revised fairly often. This is my own consulting room. We'll see how the existential approach looks from within that setting. I'm just going to select a few observations about working with young men, grown men. I don't work with boys. I work with adolescent males and older. But I think you'll see that what I have to say here reflects some of the introductory material I've provided. In our time together, the mere fact that a male is sitting there is something of a miracle, given that boys and men are taught to deny that they're feeling certain, afraid, unhappy, or anxious, or feeling anything at all, except perhaps anger in our time. As we know, historically, access to care by a counselor or psychotherapist has not been especially encouraged for males after their days with a pediatrician. This follows a pattern of relative lack of interest in and attention to male-specific health needs that has come till recently marked this conference as an example. With this in mind, back to my consulting room, at some point during a session, I may indicate to the other that this visit is timely. This is the right time, the best time to be. We're there together now. I think a male needs to know that being here in the consulting room is not an indication of some sinister abnormality or weakness. So I convey that when there is a call from another human being in distress, no matter what the presenting symptoms may be, this always, I believe, reflects existential displacement from the present, the genuine therapist responds as someone who has been drawn to a calling. As I've often said in my publications, providing therapy is, I believe, a calling, not a profession. I therefore also try to convey at some point to that guy sitting there that any time that I'm called on is the right time. Next, privacy, shame are related in them. Since what was once supposed to be propped up, his genitals, especially, is soon hidden away to be revealed only in bed. This is an episode of I Have Three Every Boy. At a certain moment in every civilized boy, that part of his body was unexpected and surprisingly turned into something to be ashamed of and registered by the reactions of his parents as an unacceptable embarrassment if displayed in public. This shame, I believe, comes to be directly related to exposure of what is private, that say, internal emotions. That's pretty much in that order. The relevance of this for ET is the male's attitude toward what is kept secret in his life. In the consulting room, approaching a discussion of what he is, keep to himself, is therefore a delicate affair. This is especially germane, I believe, to what is experiencing at the moment with me, which is our focus. What about the past? Here, the unique perspective of existential therapy is supposed to be. In media representations, popular psychology, popular psychologists, we have a few here by name. I imagine there are some there in the UK. No, that's counselors, professional counselors, but have TP status as well, personality status as well. In these settings, usually the client is congratulated, having revealed something in his past, that's seen as therapeutic. That telling of the unspeakable secret about some past behavior was said to be cathartic, such as in Catholic confession. Well, in ET, however, only what is being felt or felt now civilians. In a session, therefore, I pass over lightly and without special attention towards the earlier experience. I also readily accept hearing from them, I want to keep this to myself, or it's none of your business. The reference you hear is to the immediate present. That is when and where we want to be. It is where and when both therapists and other are, in fact. Next, male clients in general tend to want consultations to be over as quickly as possible. I therefore sometimes stay at the house. This won't take long. On the other hand, after our first meeting, this may be contraindicated if I sense it will take them a while to deal with it with me. I do not want them to feel rushed to get on to something important. No talk is small talk. What is happening now is what's important to bring into focus, no matter what the topic. Especially at the first meeting, I omit the standard ISO just to remind you we have an hour, and then we'll have to stop, unfortunately, and I know the time. In the context of the therapeutic setting, what Eugene Minkowski, a psychiatrist in the mid-20th century, called lived time, does not correlate with 1 minute or 90-minute clock hour. The therapeutic action, I believe, of ET occurs in the lived time of our account in the present of the therapeutic setting. And to quote French analyst, psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, though in a very different context, 1 minute on the clock may be just as long as 90 minutes on the clock, just as long as referring to lived time. He was speaking of the unconscious I and my existence of existence. To you to related issue, I believe old Lloyd should have a charging for counsel by the clock. But therapists are seeking in the present justice. In general, the tradition of clearly carved out periods of time, psychotherapy, class of 45-minute hour psychoanalysis, makes ability difficult for the existential therapist. Live time must determine how much the clock time is used. Extending an hour of clock time may be necessary, even though this is often difficult to manage if my schedule is heavily booked. I therefore allow 90 minutes between appointments scheduled for 1 hour. We are now talking about the world of therapy, but it reminds me a bit of absurd. Think about this. The time allotted for a procedure, which is ordinarily expected to last 20 minutes in surgery, suddenly requires 5 hours to complete, and there's no stopping
me his text
for
he's
taking
reading from a copy of it. Okay, I
well,
can put
we must do
subtitles.
like pretty longer than special. Not 4 or 5 hours, perhaps, but 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes on. On the other hand, I'm always prepared to stop if things need to. Men who feel rushed or pushed the future, back into the quicksand of their past, will usually pull in the other direction. They want to flee into imagined future or withdraw and undercover. Neither of these reactions encourages the recovery of the present. By the way, I notice my time is almost up, so let me hurry on.
Okay.
Terseness and brevity can communicate as much and as well as the long division. Sometimes words catalog feelings in therapy. Be deployed as a buffer between people. But I do not allow too much auditory space with men in therapeutic situation. Silence can be threatening, especially to young men, since among males, few words often bear much weight, as I alluded to before. Psychoanalytic waiting is scarcely tolerated by most males. I always take the lead in the session, but the tempo and momentum of the therapeutic thing, which encourages the recovery, must be determined by the other. I always assume that the session I am in with a man is the only one I will have with him, period. Towards the close of the session, therefore, I may ask, so, I'm finished here. Fine, we are finished. Meeting after today. Or did you want to talk about something else, making the break less or seemingly arbitrary, which of course it is, but also directly offering a later occasion for meeting. I want them to leave with the impression that neither of us has dominated the situation, even though I have had responsibility for it. While I do have responsibility for the therapeutic setting, he alone has responsibility for recovering his existence. The point is that in the experience of therapeutic setting, he has had a priority of the present, the hegemony of the present, if you like. And he has had it in an experience of our immediacy and a temporary appreciation for it. There was nothing special about me as a person, my personality. I have tried to make the situation one in which the present has lighted up, has come into focus for me. I try to end every session with a synopsis of where we currently are. That's the way I like to do this. As he prepares to leave my consulting room, I often conclude by asking, so where are you heading now? Or, so what's next for you now? The emphasis is on the now, not the long-term future. I believe that when I turn east is what genuine therapy has always been about. If following Swiss psychoanalysts made our plus, whose influence being vital life, we agree that existence is what is at stake in therapy. I have only taken this one step further by adding that its goal is not, as he said, just the fulfillment of possibilities of existence that have been narrowed down. It is, I believe, for that, about providing a situation which a temporarily, partially abandoned present becomes recoverable to the human being there with me. This is something to be desired for anyone in distress. But if you agree with me that many men are currently in unacknowledged distress, and we have admitted a male-friendly therapy that meets the criteria of efficacy, integrity best, to be found in what I had a few minutes to talk to you about called existential. So that's time's up.